Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White, and this is Jason's Weird Reads, and today I thought I would share with you some tips on how to survive a reading slump. If you've been watching my channel at all, you know that I've basically just come through a reading slump of my own that went on for a long time, about 8 months or more, and I learned a lot, honestly, on how to survive a reading slump. And I see these videos often where people give tips on how to survive a reading slump. And I thought I would share my own because I just experienced it. It could come back. I hope it doesn't. But the funny thing is, despite the fact that I went through a reading slump, I still read through it. I think it's kind of funny that we actually suffer when we go through reading slumps. And I know why that is for me anyway. I'm not like making fun of people who suffer for having a reading slump. It's very obvious why. It's because you enjoy reading, and if you're suddenly not enjoying that anymore, that creates like an emptiness within you that you want to enjoy it again. So how about we get into? I have like 7 little tips here, and some of them are quite related. But I hope that I can help somebody who might be going through something similar to what I went through. Actually, before I get into the tips, I just want to give a little bit of a history as to why I went through a reading slump. And I've told this story before, so I'm just going to keep it as short as possible. But in August of 2021, I stopped taking my antidepressants. And that turned out to be a mistake because as the months progressed, it's about 8 months, which is about as long as my reading slump went on for. And the reason why I went through a reading slump, it wasn't just the reading slump. I wasn't interested in doing anything anymore. Watching movies, reading, all the things I found fun were just not fun anymore. In fact, some of it was quite painful to even try to focus on. And so I found myself just going through the motions anyway. And I hoped that the enjoyment would come back, and it did. So, I did go back on my medication. And I started meditating too, so that could be why. All right, so let's get into my list here. It's kind of funny. I wanted to do this video for a long time because this isn't the first time I went through a reading slump. The funny thing is, well, I was kind of afraid to create a list. I was like, how do I know how do you survive a reading slump? But once I started coming up with the list itself, started writing itself. It was just like, yeah, it was there. I need to talk about it, and the reason why I want to talk about it, as I said before, is I keep repeating myself here. So I just want to help people who might be going through the same thing. All right, finally, the list. Number 1. This was a big one for me, actually, and that is going back and rereading old favorites. This one you'll find on a lot of people's lists on how to survive a reading slump. And I did that this year. I would say this year was the year of the reread for me. The biggest one being most recently the Anne Rice reading that I've been doing. I've been reading a lot of Anne Rice, like all of the Vampire Chronicles. Right now I'm nearing the end of The Witching Hour, and I was afraid of doing that for a long time because I was so afraid that I would reread Anne Rice and discover that I hated her now. I hated her writing, but it turns out I actually appreciate it and love it more than I did when I was reading it back in my early 20s. So, like I said, that one was huge for me. There was other books that I reread this year too, but I would say that the Vampire Chronicles was a huge one for me. At number 2, I have switch genres. If you're like me, which you might be because I generally talk about horror books, try reading another genre, like switch to fantasy or something. This has helped me in the past and quite a lot. You go through a period where you're just kind of bored with reading this what feels like the same old thing. You're reading horror. You're reading about monsters or ghosts. I mean, there's so many layers to horror, but you know what I'm talking about if you've gone through a reading slump. Sometimes it all just gets so very old. And so sometimes I'll switch up to like fantasy or science fiction. And then your brain will latch onto something new, and you find yourself just absolutely fascinated with this new thing. And that can really just break that reading slump like there's no tomorrow. At number 3, I have read shorter books and or short stories. because I find that sometimes just accomplishing something, like finishing a book, even if it's only 100 pages, feels really good, and it propels you into reading the next one. And so if you're feeling sluggish, you just don't want to read, reading that short book and finishing it can be very rewarding. And I've done this countless times. I do it all the time anyway, but I find that reading short stories and reading a novella, uh, those really help when you're in a reading slump. At number 4, if 3 doesn't work, I found this to work as well, is to find a really thick piece of book, something that you know you enjoy. You can either do a reread of something, or it's that thick book you know you're going to enjoy, and just get lost in it and don't pressure yourself to finish that book. Just find yourself immersed in that world. It's 1,000 pages long, just say, uh, and because it's 1,000 pages long, you know you're going to get lost in it. And because you're not pressuring yourself to finish it, who cares if it takes a month or two to finish it? Just lose yourself in that world, because pretty soon you're going to find yourself reading a lot again, and you'll finish it before you know it, and you'll feel really good that you finished a 1,000-page book or 750-page book. Doesn't matter how thick it is, just make sure it's a little bit thicker than the average 400, 500-page book. At number 5, I have don't struggle against the slump, because struggling against it can make it so much worse. So my advice here is just to try to find peace with it, accept it for what it is. Allow yourself to mourn the loss of your enjoyment of reading, but don't fight it. Just accept it. Accept the situation for what it is. And at number 6 here, I have, in conjunction with number 5, allow yourself to not read anything and set yourself a time period. Say, okay, for the next, let's just say 2 days, or if that's not long enough, a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. Give yourself a time period. Say, I'm not going to read anything because my brain just can't do it right now. And then when that time period, even if you have to set yourself a note or an event on your cell phone to remind yourself, you come back to it at the end of the deadline and you try to choose a book and see if you're into it. If not, then reset the date. The reason why you do this, sometimes your brain just doesn't want to read. And this goes into number 7, which is my last step here. Listen to your body and your mind. Your reading slump might be indicative of another problem, such as depression or maybe even burnout. Sometimes you and your mind just need a break. And so, like I said, just chill, relax, accept the reading slump for what it is, and if those don't work, then do one of the other ones. Read a longer piece of book. If that's too intimidating, read shorter pieces. And also, definitely try rereading an old favorite, something that you haven't read in like 10 years or more, something that you absolutely eat up. All right, so that is my own take on how to survive a reading slump. As I said, I just went through one, and I tried the majority of these ones, and some of them I tried in the past, like 10 years ago when I was going through slumps back then. So I hope this helped. Thank you for watching. Keep being safe and keep being creative. I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.